Every network aimed towards kids has phases to it, or eras, or whatever you want to call them, that were influenced by outside trends in real life. This could mean a lot of different things in terms of viewership numbers, test groups' opinions, the network executives' opinions. It's pretty much an inexact science when it comes to determining what people actually want to see, which is how we end up with shows that only get one season, or even get cancelled in the middle of that one season. In the early 2000s, a lot of pop culture can pretty much be summed up by the music industry's growth, and its having gone the way of Hollywood, inflating pop stars' lives to that of the grandeur and close supervision that many actors and actresses had been subject to for years, on an unprecedented scale. Bigger numbers of pop stars were now influencing a multitude of things, and this doesn't exclude television, with shows like American Idol seeing upwards of 20 million viewers within its first 2 seasons in 2002 and 2003, and tabloids keeping a perverse and watchful eye over the relationships and behaviors of musical individuals, duos, groups, and the like. This eventually meant kids' shows would begin to pick up on the idolization of pop stars, with the popular Disney live-action show Hannah Montana, a show about such a pop singer, seeing a 5 million viewer premiere. Now, other channels had to compete with Disney's live-action powerhouse, and who better to do this than the second best kids live-action show producer, Nickelodeon? And what better topic to explore than pop stars? This is exactly how Big Time Rush came to be. Like is expected for the kids channels with the biggest viewer bases, there's an element of competition between them. Disney Channel, like I said, arguably had the best live-action shows in the 2000s, or rather the most watched ones, with Hannah Montana, Wizards of Waverly Place, Lizzie McGuire, and That's So Raven. Nickelodeon had some live-action content that did pretty well, like All That, Drake and Josh, and multiple game shows, but at the time this couldn't quite compete on the same level, and Cartoon Network was practically doomed from the start because they only had cartoons on their network, like the name implies. Nickelodeon wanted to step up their game and would begin to put more money and thought towards making live-action shows. Nickelodeon had a previous brush with a music-based sitcom in 2007 with the Naked Brothers Band, but despite even the best of marketing efforts and a TV special movie, I'm not sure. Anyway, this show didn't last, but if you do want to listen to their music, you still can, and if you like their music, I will suggest to you Nat and Alex Wolf's real band that is still together today, and yes, that Nat and Alex Wolf, the one from the live Death Note and the other one from that scary movie. Even as the 2000s crept on, pop stars were still very much in the public eye, especially for Nick's target audience of tweens and teens. They decided to give the concept another go with Big Time Rush, and would begin so by hiring Nickelodeon Lifetime Achievement Award winner Optimus Prime. Wait, wrong one. I mean, Nickelodeon Lifetime Achievement Award winner and alleged child predator and foot fetishist Dan Schneider. Wait, not him either. I really mean, they hired former Ned's Declassified School Survival Guide creator and showrunner Scott Fellows to produce another fun and quirky hit. It's not completely clear if the network specifically asked him to pursue a musical inspiration, or if he just observed the popularity of similar concepts on his own, but Big Time Rush would be a show about 4 young musical talents, whose structure of writing would be heavily inspired by the guys who did it first, the Monkees. The Monkees are a 60s band who had their own similar TV show beginning in 1966. The Monkees' career on TV, silver screen, and tour alike would eerily end up as somewhat of a mirror to the pacing of Big Time Rush's, from concept to bitter end. Between 1962 and 1965, casting calls would go out for, quote, folk and roll musician singers for acting roles in new TV series, and that they were running parts for 4 insane boys aged 17 to 21. The casting process would eventually produce 4 of these insane boys: Davy Jones, who was the easiest choice given his prior involvement in other productions, Mike Nesmith, Mickey Dolenz, and Peter Tork, listed in order of their being cast. This proposed TV show would, like Big Time Rush was intended to, capitalize off the popularity of big names in the music industry, particularly the Beatles. The Monkees TV show would run from 66 to 68, and would get a movie, Head, at the end of this run. Between the show's airing and finale, a few albums of music produced by the boys would be released as genuine albums, and they would have concerts to play these songs live when not filming the show. Turmoil between the boys and the heavy controlling of the producers over the band's music would eventually tear the band apart, and even after producing albums that they had genuinely done most of the work on, the Monkees were never really respected to be as real of a band as the Beatles. This didn't mean that they weren't popular, of course. The band would lose Peter, then lose Mike, eventually dwindling down to only Mickey and Davey, who would continue to produce genuine music into the early 70s before the two would lose the right to operate under the Monkees title. Oddly enough, in the 80s, Mike Nesmith would have a pioneering hand in creating an MTV predecessor and inspiration, Pop Clips, which actually aired on Nickelodeon and can be credited with directly contributing to the channel's early growth. The bad air between the guys would clear beyond then, and beginning in the late 80s, reunions would occur where all four Monkees would participate, and they even got a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame in '89. They would have more reunions, produce more albums created from old unreleased songs and even new content, and go on tour for the 45th anniversary of the band in 2011. Davy Jones unfortunately passed a year later in 2012, followed by Peter Tork in 2019. Mike and Mickey would go on another tour with just the two of them to honor their friends and the Monkees' legacy before Mike's passing in 2021. Mickey is currently the last surviving Monkee and continues to this day to honor the music and memories made between the four of them. When the conceptualization for Big Time Rush began as early as 2005, fellows would even cite the Monkees TV show as a prime inspiration for the show, down to the humor and bouncing between music and fun that he had planned to do with the show. Casting for Big Time Rush started in 2007, with the producers searching for young men in the same age range as what was sought after for the Monkees. 1,500 people auditioned, and from these 1,500, 4 were chosen, with James Maslow and Logan Henderson being cast first, followed by Carlos Pena Jr., who, like Davy Jones, had previously had a role on another show, specifically Ned's Declassified. Lastly, Kendall Schmidt would be cast after he was suggested by Logan as a replacement for another actor who didn't quite fit with the other 3 guys. Big Time Rush would be filmed at Studio 27 at Paramount Pictures Hollywood in Los Angeles, California, and would air 2 years later in 2009, after the Disney Channel aired a similar show, Jonas, about the titular Jonas Brothers. The show would premiere as a preview as an hour-long special during Nickelodeon's Thanksgiving weekend for that year, and then officially air its first actual episode in January of 2010. The plot for the preview, which acts as sort of a precursor to the show, would follow 4 friends and hockey players for some reason, who hailed from Minnesota. The 4 boys, Kendall Knight, James Diamond, Carlos Garcia, and Logan Mitchell, would attend an audition being conducted by a music producer, spurred by James' strong desire to be seen and become famous. Considering James to be the most talented of the 4 of them, when he gets turned down by Gustavo, the man conducting the search, Kendall gets very angry at him, and Gustavo takes Kendall's drive into consideration, offering to take him on as a client. Kendall turns down his offer, giving him the classic ultimatum of, "I'm not going unless my friends can too." Gustavo brings the guys to Los Angeles, where they are given 3 days to turn around from rowdy, troublemaking teens to work-driven pop stars. Every one of them is practically horrible at doing anything that involves, like, singing and dancing. After being fired by Gustavo and then luckily taken back after they promise to finally behave and get the whole band thing together, they're given a period of 3 months to produce a CD. The rest of the first season takes place within these 3 months, following the boys grappling with schooling, girl problems, and their own relationships with each other, on top of having to make music and eventually perform. Like the structuring of the Monkees TV show, various antics ensue in the first 2/3 of the show, with the song and the resolution to the episode taking place in the last third. The show would go on for 20 episodes that season and would end with the boys having a concert for the release of their first album. Something else notable about Big Time Rush, as it is a mark of Scott Phillips' work, is the heavy-handed use of cartoonish sound effects throughout the show.
What are you gonna do? Invent the perfect girlfriend?
Run! Oh, it's fruit smoothie and it's mine, all mine. I'm on this side. Oh, you just made a big mistake. I just feel like work better around witnesses. Or people. People like you and I. Good people.
Rivaled only by Johnny Test, I swear, it seems like there's a sound effect used every 5 seconds in Big Time Rush. It's very, very distracting. On that note, let's get into the reception of Season 1. The series' official premiere strategically aired after I Saved Your Life, the episode of iCarly where Freddie literally almost dies, and then they throw in the most ick explanation for why Carly starts having feelings for him, saw an audience of 6.8 million, the biggest audience for a premiere of any of Nick's other live-action titles. BTR's audience thought very popular of the show, with younger kids digging the humor and older kids finding a particular liking for the built-in marketing of the boys themselves. Kids like to laugh and teens like a pretty face, and this had both. Critics, on the other hand, were mixed on the show. Some thought it was pretty lackluster and unfunny, and some more serious takes against the show were rooted in the show's theming itself, saying that selling the Hollywood lifestyle to kids in this glamorous and fun way, in a time where real-life stars were unraveling under the watch of the public, was unrealistic at best, and preying on impressionable minds at worst. Especially given that the boys of BTR started out as just normal teenagers, the constant narrative being pushed by both this show and other shows on other channels at the time that anyone could be a pop sensation was kind of like telling kids it could be worth it to gamble their lives and mental health. Things start to get a little weird in season 2 in terms of the show, but in real life things could not be going more smoothly for the Big Time Rush name. In the canon, the end of season 1 begins a 6-week-long tour for the band, and when we return to the second season, which premiered in September of 2010, they've returned from this tour and begin to catch up on what they've missed in their regular lives, including their relationships, which will get a separate section because I have so many spoilery nitpicks about them. A month later, BTR would get their first official album released in real life, the self-titled BTR in October. Season 2 is the longest and introduces more characters and more songs, and some strange little details about the world that Big Time Rush takes place in. This is the debut season of BTR's best and most remembered song from back then, Boyfriend. This season also has an episode with Tom Kenny playing SpongeBob SquarePants' Patchy the Pirate, which literally means that Big Time Rush and SpongeBob SquarePants take place in the same universe. And I could go on from there infinitely in terms of how that connects everything to everything, but I won't. Not this time. Season 2 would have the boys making new music for a new album in-universe, which would also end up creating a second BTR album in real life, titled Elevate, to be released in November of 2011. Akin to the occurrence of the Monkees getting a movie after their second season, which would unfortunately also be their last, Big Time Rush also got a movie in the middle of the second and third seasons of their show. This movie takes place during the first stop in Big Time Rush's world tour in England, and takes advantage of the boom in spy culture in the 2000s and 2010s. In a roundabout and almost cruel way, the movie, given its setting in British territory, has a headache-inducing amount of references to the Beatles, as well as covers of their songs. Every other joke is a pun about a Beatles title, and even one of the temporary characters for the movie, Penny Lane, is named after the Beatles song of the same name. This is kind of a weird mind game, basing a movie based on a show inspired by the Monkees who were inspired by the Beatles on the Beatles. And the premiere for the movie on Nickelodeon was hosted by the face of the second wave of the British invasion, One Direction.
Hi, we're One Direction. We're about to watch the Big Time movie.
Of course, pop culture references weren't out of the realm of possibility for BTR to begin with, as they previously referenced and spoofed real artists like Eminem, Katy Perry, The Wiggles. They also had actual musicians guest star on the show, like Nicole Scherzinger, Snoop Dogg, Miranda Cosgrove as herself, and American Idol contestant Jordan Sparks. Some of the actors from Big Time Rush would appear alongside some of the actors from Victorious on Nickelodeon's main game show at the time, Brain Surge. Season 3 picks up on the last day of the world tour in the movie. They soon return to Los Angeles and again adapt to any changes that had gone on at home during that time. This season also introduces the best side character, Lucy, a girl pursuing a rock career, and no, I'm strict on it this time, I will not be taking any other answer into consideration. Yet the only thing that could possibly bring her down is a lengthy and unnecessary double love triangle.
Kendall?
Are you kidding me? Big Time Rush has everything that a teen sitcom is supposed to have. And that unfortunately means boring relationships with repetitive themes and plots. Each band member pretty much has their own love interest at certain points of the show, and the only one I condone is between Carlos and Alexa Vega, who is shown as herself in one episode of Big Time Rush where she actually admits to having a crush on him, and then later on in real life they actually got married and are still together to this day. Anyway, Kendall's most times girlfriend in the show is Jo, and James is a ladies' man and flirtatious, but is mostly seen to pursue Lucy, especially in the ending of the show. If you don't want to be spoiled on an incredibly minor detail, you can skip to this timestamp. During the series, there are multiple episodes where Kendall and Jo break up and get back together, and break up and get back together, and break up and get back together. And then there's an arc where they're broken up and he has this big crush on Lucy and she likes him back, but Jo also still likes Kendall, and James is mad at Kendall because he likes Lucy, and Kendall also still likes Jo, and you think Kendall's gonna choose Lucy because the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results, and Jo is boring and underwritten and is only there for Kendall's development in terms of his personal relationships and self-reflection, which is all undone at the end because he chooses her for whatever reason. The biggest fumble ever. And then they turn around and try to villainize Lucy for a while for still supposedly having feelings for Kendall, only to do another 180 and have James pursue her and officially end up with her. But only in the very last episode of the show. Season 4 premiered in May of 2013 and is the last season that the show got. The series ends with another hour-long special and has callbacks to some of the bigger plot points explored in both the show and the movie. It again plays on a spy theme, and takes place at the Tween Choice Awards, a parody of the network's actual yearly Teen Choice Awards, so I have no idea what that means for the Big Time Rush canon. I think Big Time Rush might be in an alternate universe. This episode wraps up what little there is to wrap up. I mean, really, it's suggested that the band's career continues after this. I don't really know what else this achieves other than being a big, gaudy send-off for the show. Their third album, titled 24/7, released after this and included the rest of the new songs present in the last of the show. In 2013 and 2014, they went on some tours in real life, and then that was it. No more show meant no more music. Since Big Time Rush made and released actual music and went on tours in real life, they gained a following as a real band. Like the Monkees, however, most people just reduced them to a fake put-on performance for TV, not genuine musicians like they were. The show ended and the band officially disbanded, to the dismay of thousands of fans of the show and their music alike. Fans begged for Big Time Rush to be renewed or for the band to release new music, and in the wake of the success of One Direction, people were very confused as to why Big Time Rush wouldn't continue to market off the pop music industry, and specifically the boy band part of that industry, which I mentioned earlier, which was seeing a huge resurgence with One Direction's popularity. This didn't mean that the band members had any particular beef with each other or that their lives would go off the rails. On the contrary, they actually all remained pretty close and did well for themselves. Kendall went on to appear a few times in another Nickelodeon sitcom, School of Rock, which is exactly what it sounds like it is, and would actually continue to pursue a musical career with a friend of his, creating new music in the band they'd formed in 2008, Heffron Drive. Logan focused on himself and actually put out a few songs on his own later in the 2010s. James also put out some of his own music, including a cover of a Charlie Puth song, and why does this man keep following me everywhere? James would also appear in the 18th season of Dancing with the Stars in 2014, even making it to the finals. Carlos also put out some music, in Spanish actually, which I think is super cool of him to pursue something that being in Nick's form of Big Time Rush otherwise wouldn't have allowed him to. Like I mentioned before, he'd also married Alexa Vega in 2014, and they both have done some pretty cool things together, such as having kids and putting out a book they both helped write. Big Time Rush had just quietly rescinded from the public eye. They had survived the very industry the show was inspired by, and to my knowledge, came out fairly unscathed. But for years, that itch remained for many that missed the music and presence of Big Time Rush. In 2020, during the pandemic, the band reunited virtually to wish their fans well in dealing with the stress that it had brought on, and stood to be a beacon of hope in dark times, as had been done with multiple other shows and groups. In 2021, it was announced that Big Time Rush would go on a small tour, and then in that same period would release a new single. In early 2022, spurred by the success of their first little tour, they announced a bigger official reunion tour for 2022, followed by many more singles and acoustic versions of these singles, with their latest single having come out in May of 2023. While they aren't necessarily back in full swing, they are making huge strides together and have appeared on many talk shows and in multiple interviews. They're still going on tours and have an album coming up actually, and they're hopefully still going to continue making music. Big Time Rush holds a very special place in the hearts of many kids who have since grown up, and it's awesome for me to be able to say that they're still going strong and having fun doing it. They live up to the legacy of their inspiration in the Monkees, and hopefully we'll see these four insane boys get the recognition they deserve as a real band.